Hi guys, and welcome to, this very interesting discussion of how big is the warp. I'm sorry that I'm late. The machine spirits were a bit of a bastard, so I had to beat them up with my Empress powers. Yeah, something like that. So guys, this video is going to be basically, brought to you by Moonlight. Moonlight, hi to you in the chat. He has been one of the most consistent members in his contribution when it comes to information in our Golden Astartes Discord server. So thank you so much, Moonlight. I appreciate that. I may be a bit late on some days and too busy, but I'm going through everything, reading it, and I appreciate your effort very much because this is extreme amount of info that you posted there. And the video that we are going to actually be going through now is once again a video that Moonlight suggested, and it goes through that topic, and he also provided all the materials from the video. I'm sorry guys, I was like, doing my hair like this, and my puppy was all over me, and it's a miracle that I'm in some kind of a appearance right now. Okay, so let us begin. So first, this is a video, amazing video by the way, by webcamparrot. I featured the video down below, so of course guys, most importantly, go and watch the video in the fullest extent, support the creator, and watch it how it's supposed to be watched, because I'm going to play it, stop it, and just, talk about all of that info. So yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's a 30-minute video. We're going to go through it, do analysis on it based on my previous knowledge of Warhammer and how Warhammer is written, based on what is written, so I can make some kind of a logical connections, how these things could be explained. So, having that said, guys, let me just check the chat. Hi to everybody. Sun sparkly straps. Oh yeah, yes, this is actually my Mary Jane Watson day one of our Bulgarian Comic Con outfit. That I went like that. Basically like cosplaying the closest thing that I can find to Mary Jane Watson's, one of her basically blouses in the comic books. And then I went with a Spider-Man t-shirt that I made myself on the second day, so I was a second version of Mary Jane Watson then. Hi Dark, Mary Gary Watson. That's awesome, Edward. Hi to Edward. My Primarchs are also in the chat, almost all of them. Aurelian and Claudius. Hi to the Ivy. Alexander. Hi to you, Ferret. Hi to you too. Okay, guys. So this is a 30-minute video, but it's going to take a while to go through it. So let's start right away.
Hey all, it's webcamparrot here, with my first ever video on Warhammer 40k. As some of you are aware, I'm a pretty big fan of the series, and I've been playing the game, collecting the models, and actually reading the media for nearly 20 years. And I have to say, the current content on YouTube talking about this franchise,
Sorry, guys,
is almost entirely comprised of just poorly researched garbage, not unlike most of the comic book community on YouTube. I'm pretty well known already for doing good in-depth research on comic book cosmology, and I've decided to finally apply it here to 40k too.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff on his channel about DC. I can't wait to check that out since I'm also a DC fan.
Along with help from my friend Hashi, who goes by Alfarius Lives on Twitter. I'll provide a reference for all of the quotes sourced.
Okay, stream sound a bit soft. Putting it a bit on, a bit higher. I hope that you don't hear the video like in an echo, so let me know if that's the case.
The description. For those of you unfamiliar with 40k, the warp is the realm of souls, used for interstellar, faster-than-light travel, and home to many demons, predators, and gods. The most notable of these gods being the Big Four.
Okay, the video screens is good. It sounds maybe a bit low, but okay overall. Sorry about the noise. Goldie! Stop it! He's a bit upset that I'm not paying him any attention right now. Okay, dear Kaitan.
Nurgle, god of rot and decay.
I'm gonna lower the
Khorne,
sound.
god of bloodshed and battle. Tzeentch, god of trickery and magic. And Slaanesh, god of, well, some other stuff I can't talk about without completely ruining the generally family-friendly nature of
Yeah,
my videos.
yeah.
So to start with, I would like to go over some preliminary statements and then gradually show more and more impressive statements for the warp.
Yes. By the way, guys, as I'm seeing this, the video volume in general is low. So there's that. I put it to the max.
Starting off by attacking a pretty egregious myth surrounding its size and scope.
Thank you.
There seems to be this idea that because the Chaos Gods cannot seem to conquer a single galaxy, that they can't be that strong, often leading to people saying that the warp is only about galaxy size itself. Firstly, the webway, which even at its peak is only a small portion of the warp, once led to and extended into the empty voids beyond the galaxy, as well as the demon prince and servant of chaos, Belcor, being well known for conquering entire galaxies himself, galaxies that are clearly not the Milky Way. Khorne has also been witnessed reaping and collecting billions upon billions of souls from several different galaxies. Tzeentch also listens to the hopes of every sentient being in the universe. So clearly, the warp does reach vastly beyond just the Milky Way, and is much larger than just a single galaxy or something like that.
Okay. Oh, dark, yeah. I'm thankful I don't have a cat, okay.
But it's much, much more impressive than this.
Okay, yes, it is. So we'll see about that. And my other Primarch is here. Hi, Mate. No, we are not going deaf. Okay, continuing.
For instance, it stated that every single demon is a direct manifestation of its god's will, and is directly created from their essence, and in turn, there are an infinite variety of different demons. Meaning that each god, let alone just the warp they reside in, is of infinite scope and size at the very least. A void missile, which travels through the warp, that's how it works, can accidentally end up in any of the million universes, which is something that even regular Adeptus Titanicus members know about. Kabanda, as part of a plan directly involving the Chaos God themselves, fell through the hidden spaces between worlds, past the wonders of infinity, falling forever and no time at all, till he infected the delicate workings of infinite interleaved universes, creating a warp storm that would give the Chaos Gods a foothold in every single universe.
Yeah, I also read that. So first point is how big is the warp? I mean, we're gonna continue with the video, but basically the gist of it is that it is infinitely big. It doesn't have any kind of dimensions that we can quantify, measure, or whatever. It does not confine into any human ways of understanding, and basically is absolutely everywhere in all of the universes, all of existence. It's just everywhere. Okay.
Which is backed up by a statement from Knights of the Imperium that says that there are a theoretically infinite number of dimensions of potentially infinite scale, an endless series of alternate realities, and chaos should be present in all of them. Magnus, when he first traversed the warp, witnessed just random warp entities, not even the big four Chaos Gods, create and destroy entire universes with a random thought. Ahriman, in a similar situation, was capable of snapping realities and remaking them with nothing but his will, stating that it was easy and like nothing for him within the warp, where his powers are strongest. Horus also tells us, in words that echoed down the eons from a place beyond time and space, that countless universes have burned before chaos. And it has also been stated in a White Dwarf issue that the forces of chaos have conquered many realities, with forces from a dozen different realities appearing in each instance. Across all of these multitudes of universes, realities, and realms.
Okay, hold on. The realm of chaos is not merely the home of the dark gods, it's also their battlefield, the arena of the chaos gods' great game of supremacy. the chaos gods are consistently at war with one another. Yeah, we know that. Vying for power amid the immaterial planes, despite their myriad differences, the great gods of chaos have the same goal: total domination. Such absolute power cannot be shared, especially amongst gods. That's another topic on its own, but it just really makes me think, if it's so easy to destroy universes' realities, why they didn't do anything to us. I mean, not anything, but they didn't just fail through the warp and destroyed us. I mean, some demon might decide to fart and destroy us, but I guess that's not happening for some reason. That reason should be the emperor. I'm just, makes me think about that. It seems so scary and so unbelievably incomprehensible, but in the same time, humans are still there. So, okay, I'm gonna say the emperor because we know that he's the only thing that keeps them away. And I guess in the other realities that they can just destroy like this, there is no equivalent to the emperor. That's also interesting to think about.
Both within and without the warp, the Chaos Gods are endlessly fighting each other. This is why they don't just instantly conquer the Milky Way. They have a lot of other things going on, along with the protection of the Emperor himself, E-Money, the big cheese, a mighty psyker, and Necron technology designed to keep them out. It's ludicrous to just say that the warp is only the size of a galaxy, or that it's not interacting with all these other universes, when we've repeatedly seen that this is true in 40k alone.
Yeah.
However,
Which of course means that Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy are connected through the warp, meaning that the warp is existing in both of those universes. So, well, we already know that, and the gods kind of express themselves differently there. I mean, differently in a bit more direct manner sometimes. But the point is, they're everywhere.
there are also clearly statements for higher dimensional structures that should be vastly larger than this multiverse I just described, that the Chaos Gods, and by extension the Warp, compare to or contain. First of these is a statement for a piece of Necron tech that is 20-dimensional, used to contain a shard of a Catan who themselves have fought warp gods and lost before. For instance, when Kayla Menchikane shattered the Nightbringer. A similar, if not identical, structure.
Okay, it's very interesting that this Catan fought them and lost, and they are very, very powerful, the Catan. So here's one thing to remember. I don't know if that's true, if all the Catan, get together against the Chaos Gods, but I always was curious how they measure in power. I guess the Catan just, didn't measure well.
Tesseract labyrinths are also stated to be extra-dimensional, adding to this evidence. Semyon, an adept of the Martian priesthood and guardian of the Void Dragon, even claimed that the Immaterium, this material universe, he says, contains a myriad of dimensions that cannot be defined by so limited a thing as human language, which clearly the Chaos Gods should scale to. Another tech priest looking at information gathered from the warp.
Okay, I have to bring that back because I have a point to make. His arms wide, Bulgarian. You have such a limited understanding of the material world, girl. The material world. Words like here and there have no meaning. The myriad dimensions of this material universe cannot be defined by so limited a thing as human language. Yes, so as I said before, guys, in my previous analyses, and here is the first thing that we hit here that has correlation from esoteric science, because as I told you before, the authors of 40k have to know these things in order for them to come up with their concepts. So this is one of the connections. Basically, that the human mind cannot comprehend the vastness, the nature of the warp, because we don't have an equivalent here on Earth. We don't have the capacity. I mean, our minds do not have the capacity to fully grasp what the warp is. That in esoteric science will be replaced, the word warp is replaced with the word just spiritual worlds, and the human mind reference, I mean, the explanation of how the human mind is, I mean, how not capable it is how to say this? Okay, so it's really hard to explain. But basically, the human mind, when it's living, and there's actually some reference to that particular thing as well. When you live in your body, when you are, living, yes, exactly, you cannot comprehend the spiritual world in the same way that you could if you were dead. So there was something here about that if you're dead, maybe then you're going to grasp the warp. So the human mind, that is, I mean, that applies to when you're alive, because you're confined to your body, to the limitations of that body, and you're in that state of being, the physical state of being, that prevents you by nature to understand what are the highest worlds, what are the highest levels of existence. I mean, you can to a point, but if you want to fully understand that, you either have to get your mind to the highest degree, that you also cannot comprehend what the heck is the highest degree to begin with, but it's possible. And if you die, you're going to be one with those worlds, and then you're going to understand. And also, the spiritual world has also different realms, so to speak. It's not exactly accurate term, but like here is explained that the warp has layers. So once again, very interesting comparison and parallel to make between the sources of how every author, writer in the world takes their concepts so they can come up with their own, and this is translated to 40k very much so. At least I haven't seen a universe that tackles all of these concepts in the way that 40k does. Granted, the 40k totally twists and turns everything, and basically the spiritual world, the warp in 40k, is the opposite of what the spiritual world in esoteric science is. Because the warp is like hell. I mean, it's not exact the exact sorry, the exact analogy of hell. It is not, but it is in many ways hell. So that's what's interesting. It's like whoever came up with the warp, maybe it was one person, maybe it was three people, who knows. They took all that they know from the spiritual science. Whenever I mean, whenever uh, sources of information they're used, and they create the opposite of that. The opposite of that. Also, 40k is the opposite, the negative, of how the world functions according, once again, to esoteric science. I mean, everything is uh, dark and grim dark, you know, and in on the other hand, in esoteric science, you see if something, I mean, when something is dark, I mean bad, you can perceive it as bad, let's say. You see that behind that there are certain forces. You see how there's also good forces that counter that. Sometimes you feel like they do not, but you see why, and it's just a world that is much like, I mean, much more coherent, intelligent, and just makes sense for the existence to be, I mean, have any kind of a point to it. Whereas 40k is a complete hell, and everything turned upside down, which I just realized going through all the information from this video before the stream. So that's very interesting, that 40k is actually the bad, I mean, the mirror image of what esoteric science presents all of these concepts to be in reality. Extremely fascinating. I mean, extremely fascinating. I'm sure that, uh, I mean, if you have interest about all of these things and how fictional literature is written, you have to have the base, and you have to be on that side of the writer and to some capacity to understand why they wrote things, how they written them, and what they could mean. You can explain the lore, but you cannot explain what's behind that, how is the reasoning going, how are the threads, all of that. I mean, threads, links, from thing to thing, from concept to concept. You have to be like the writers in order to grasp that. And to me, that's the best thing ever. If I can, analyze that, if I can grasp that, that is how you are like, okay, so the writer wanted us to understand this and that, and it's, you know, like other literature. Sorry, that word in English is very, very, like, I have to twist my tongue this way. um yeah, I mean, basically what I want to say is that when a writer wants to speak through their text, and you know, the capacity of understanding that text is going to depend on, do you know the same things or similar things as the writer, so you can like be like, I mean, so you can connect things and be like, oh yes, this and that he meant, he referenced this or that information. So to me, that is all that, I mean, that's most interesting thing. Otherwise are just concepts that actually, when you put them together, they don't really look like they make much sense, because you don't know that they're actually the opposite of something else. Ah, so interesting. Okay, in order to not break my thought, I'm gonna read your comments after that, as always, because this is complex as it is, and if I forget something, it's gonna be a big bummer. I'm trying to explain, I mean, he's trying to explain 20 years of, you know, Warhammer. I'm trying to explain that 20 years plus what brought the writers, I mean, how those 20 years of information were brought to life. Actually, he is in Warhammer, you know, for 20 years. Warhammer is more than 30 years now. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. So yeah, continuing.
Human language, which clearly the Chaos Gods should
Oh
speak.
yes, and the language, that too. That, you know, we don't have language for a lot of the things in the spiritual world. Some, in some ways yes, in some ways no. In some ways the language developed through time, so we can. But in the concept and in the context of 40k, yeah, that's also true. A lot of things would not be able to be put to words, because there's just no earthly materium equivalent to them.
Scale to. Another tech priest looking at information gathered from the warp, something the Mechanicus call the Speranza, describes it as an infinitely dimensional realm of thought and was beyond his ability entirely.
Yes, okay. Moonlight. Okay, I really wanted to. Sorry about that. Really want to look at your comments real quick. Thanks, Matty, for that. Thanks, Moonlight. We have a lot more here to dig in, so I'm excited. Let's continue.
The Primarchs Perturabo and Magnus, in an attempt to fully and more properly explore the warp, create a navigation device similar to a sextant called the Antikythera, but with infinite more dimensions to its operation. It was created to explore the warp and required these infinite dimensions of operation in order to work properly there. But upon actually exploring the Great Ocean, Magnus would find that this didn't even come close to describing its majesty, and that it only barely described the surface of the infinite ocean of the warp. Upon dipping his head just below the surface, he encountered an outerversal layer with far more complexity than its surface. So complex that the infinite dimensionality faded into a background without any dimensions or points of reference. And this was but the first layer of the infinitely layered and deep warp.
Okay, here the connection that you can make is that, once again, in spiritual worlds from esoteric science, you can see that each and every layer dimension is so different from the next. It's completely separate. It contains particular things, and each level is higher than the other. So basically, let's, I mean, that's kind of okay, I'm gonna say it. So in order to understand that concept, because we're going to see that concept, a reference here, or at least in one of the materials that you Moonlight provided in the Discord group. So each layer is highest than the next. So when a soul dies, when you die, you go through the first, which is closest to Earth, earthly existence. You relive, not relive, but you are still connected to Earth. You feel some earthly desires, but you cannot fulfill them because you don't have a body. You see your life backwards and reflect on each and every moment, and you feel the pain that you caused in such a extreme measures that there's no equivalent to that on earth, and you feel also the joy that you brought to other people in such a extreme amount that once again is not possible to experience on earth. And then you realize what you did wrong, what you did right, what could have been done more, all of those things. Then you get to the other place, I mean to the other realm. As time on earth passes, there's no concept of time. That's also something that is similar. There's no concept of time in the spiritual world, but there's going to be some kind of equivalent to that on earth. So 1/3 of a person's life that died, they spent in the first layer. So 1/3, if you lived for 90 years, you have to calculate how much is that, how much is 1/3 of that, and you will know how many years someone will be at that first layer. And then they go to the next and to the next, and there are 7 in total. And when they get to the last one, that is what we are going to discuss, the last one too. That is the highest one, and that is where reincarnation also is basically scheduled, thought of based on all the people that are supposed to be around you, all the lives that you're supposed to be affecting, and how that's gonna affect the whole earth and humanity in general. Those are very complicated things, guys. But I'm just saying that the layers that are explained here, when Magnus went to the first and then to the second, like the previous totally melted away, like it doesn't exist. Yeah, that is because each and every one of these layers are truly totally individual. They are individual worlds by themselves, each higher than the next, and higher it means higher in terms of consciousness perception. So the higher in consciousness that you reached on earth, you're going to develop the basically the senses, literally the capabilities to perceive each and every layer. If you did not develop to that extent, you will perceive to whatever level you develop. So there's also one of these planes. One of them is all the arts of earth. I mean, everything that any person ever created in terms of art form, all the paintings, all the poems, all the movies, they're like in their etheric form, they're just saved like a spiritual mirror of what they are on earth. But also you can see their essence, the love in them. You can perceive them what they really are in their fullest state of creation. I don't know how else to say it. So I guess once again they took that concept and made it like each and every layer of the warp is like I mean, you can't even explain it, but it's interesting how they put this, how different they are and how everything else disappears once you enter the next one. And this also hints to the insignificance of the previous one compared to the one that you're currently in. So if you continue forward, you experience the same with the next one. You'll be even more impressed, so to speak.
To put this into perspective for fans of my channel already familiar with DC, the difference between just 2 of these layers is similar to the difference between a normal human in DC and a new god. To back this up, the narrator also talks about the layered infinities of the warp on 2 different occasions in Dark Imperium, a much later book. You see, the warp has many layers, like an onion or Shrek or something. It's not even considered possible to access these more advanced layers of the warp, called the deep ways, and that even warp travel only skims across eternity's face, like stones thrown by a child. We can see this clearly with statements regarding the Eye of Terror, a place in the universe where the warp has punched through into the material universe, and a place where the laws of space, time, and reality do not apply. A place where time does not even exist as a concept, unless such a triviality might please the dark gods themselves. In another book, it's described as being beyond the boundaries of physical space, unrestricted by time or causality, infinite in scope but without form or structure. It is constantly reborn, but has never changed, eternally shifting through endless potential, It is devoid of consistency, unbound by the laws of time and space. The warp has no physical dimensions, and the realm of chaos is without limits or true geography.
Okay, so that is perfectly logical. Something that's not material. Um, it's of course that's not gonna have any form, anything. I mean, any constrictions. These limitations exist only in the material world in general. So that is totally okay. Let me go back a bit. Outside imagination. Yes, because imagination on Earth is material. An impossible abstraction made real only by metaphor. That is absolutely the case, yes. And the rolling emotions of mortal minds. And their lack of information as well. It is constantly reborn but has never changed. That's very strange way of putting it. Reborn in what way? How to put an analogy on that? Reborn but never changed. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense from all the points that I'm trying to like search through my mind now. Eternally shifting through endless and potential. Well, that uh, what to tell ya? That is literally how you can. I mean, if you are Ariman, for instance, Ariman from Esoteric Science, not here, and that's also the other shocking thing that who knows who the heck is Ariman? Not a lot of people. He is. Probably should not say it here. Okay, so Ariman in 40k and Ariman in Esoteric Science. Let's say he's a much bigger deal in Esoteric Science than he is in 40k, actually. If you think he's a bigger deal here, in Esoteric Science, he is much, 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 much bigger. But it sounds like something that he would say in terms of describing an evil dimension. And I say evil because endless in potential, I mean, how this is worded is from his point of view, a bit narcissism in the words as well. That's also hard to explain, but there's a way of some demonic entities to speak in order, for something to seem like it has self-esteem to it. It's really hard to explain, guys. That's just very hard to explain. But the point is, we get it. We get it. It's still opposite of heaven or the spiritual world. No mundane sense can see, smell, or hear it, and even the most powerful psychers cannot glean the warp's true nature. Okay. Yeah, driven and sane, yeah, we know that. Ghost strife and constant war, fighting over the raw stuff, creation and interesting. So, ghost fighting. I lost my line here. Yeah, the raw stuff of creation. That is referring to the very low planes of existence from the spiritual world, by the way. So those are going to be the lowest possible scum of humanity that you can imagine. I'm talking once again in a parallel of the esoteric science, what this could be referring to. How, I mean, the information that this is based on, that's what I'm saying. In this unknowable realm, titanic hosts clash, locked together in a conflict that is as old as the universe and can never be won. That is also a thing, but that is going to be between good and evil, literally, in esoteric science. So not just beings that are like on the same level and they fight. It's going to be between beings that are from two different sides, good and evil, and maybe on similar levels in terms of their respective sides, and they will fight basically not for themselves, but that's going to be a fight for humanity, who gets to have more influence on humanity. Vast armies rage and stream, each warrior formed only of energy and emotion. Okay, and each driven onwards by the whims of their creators. And those are basically the souls that dedicate their lives to one of the gods, let's say, and after that their soul becomes a part of whoever's god's legion. They become like their lackeys, their mindless servants. They are already given to whoever a god they decide to dedicate their life to. So another, I mean, that is the comparison, the analogy of what this could refer to.
Potential. It is devoid of consistency, unbound by the laws of time and space. The warp has no physical dimensions, and the realm of chaos is without limits or true geography. In the 4th edition rulebook, it's described as a churning ocean of chaos, raw emotion, and Magnus given form, where the laws of physics, time.
Hold that thought. Okay. It's also kind of similar in a way of the layers of the hell in the Bible. Uh, yeah, but if we have to talk about the Bible, what it means, then I have to be here all night. But yeah, basically that's also a metaphor. There is no actual hell like in the cartoons or the movies, based on esoteric science and of the esoteric explanation of the Bible as well. Oh my gosh, it's very it's very hard. So basically when if you did a lot of wrong stuff, and Lauhauser, I'm glad that you're having ASMR. Tingles, that's awesome. I don't know how that happens. I really have no idea. Uh and yeah, Legion of the Damned. Somebody remind me that I have to do a video on that on the Discord, because it was on my mind for forever basically. So yeah, not to lose my thought, because it's very easy to lose these complicated thoughts. So yeah, where when somebody, let's say you've been like a serial killer or something, let's say, you're going to experience, like I said, this is going back to what I said, when you die, you experience all the bad things that you did in such a manner that is just absolutely, you cannot even comprehend how strong that is on earth. There's just no such thing, and you feel the pain of each and every one person, creature that you hurt, all those things. So that is hell. That's the actual hell. And that is it. It's not a place, it's the experience that you get from for I mean for what you did. um and then layers, the layers are like the different stages of that, because you go through one stage and another stage of suffering, and all of that suffering, once again, is not caused by anything else but you yourself and your actions. So it's not like somebody is poking you in the ass and is punishing you. It is just karmic law basically, and action and then reaction, I mean causality, all those things. That's karmic law, and the simplest way is to explain it, because it's not really simple and I have to literally put everything into 2 words, and is actually a material for, well, I mean, at least few months I have to sit here and explain it. So I guess you get the reference. And there's something else here. Such journeys without them taking centuries. The warp, uh, imperium or immaterium, as it is sometimes known as in the alternate dimension. Okay, but imperium is a different thing. That is what I wanted to say when I said, I mean, when I talked about the last layer, the 7th layer of the spiritual world, where you actually get your get your bags, metaphorical bags, I mean, from the previous life, and what you won, I mean, what you learned, what qualities you won, and then everything basically calculates between all the people that you live in, and you go to earth again to reincarnate. The process of going down starts, and that is actually what is the imperium. That is the peak of the spiritual world. And here, if the warp in imperium and immaterium is one and the same, they should not be, because the Empyrean should be the highest layer of the warp then. But kind of seems like some place there was mentioning and hinted at, like, that there is, I mean, that the Empyrean is that, but here is like written the warp Empyrean or Immaterium, as it sometimes know, the two things are just not the same. The Immaterium is the warp in general, And the imperium, it is a part of the immaterium, but it's just the highest point of that, literally the highest point. So that is interesting why it's written this way. Transdimension, okay, is an alternate dimension existing beyond the veil of reality that is a dark mirror of the material realm. Dark mirror of the material realm. Another mirror, which is very interesting because they did use that word. Another mirror of opposites, like I explained. Spiritual world is not a dark mirror of the material world. It is the better mirror of the material world, like a lot better. Um, it is the concepts, the blueprints, uh, the beauty of what we could be, everything, uh, everything that you cannot imagine, but everything good about humanity, what it could be, what it is, what it was, everything is there. So it's the most beautiful retrospect of humanity, basically. So once again, we see proof that the warp is written like an opposite of what we have as information from the from the esoteric science. Very interesting, like so interesting. Okay. And madness given form. Yeah, absolutely opposite. And their madness doesn't exist in the spiritual world because you, like I said, you realize everything that you've done, why you did it, and I mean, you will regret it like very, very painfully, and you understand why it's bad and all of that. Where the laws of physics, time, and nature are meaningless concepts. Yeah, so the laws of physics, time, and nature meaningless. Once again, the opposite. The spiritual world is the opposite. Although there's no time, space, physics there, laws of nature there, they're not meaningless. They're printed on there. They're the spiritual manifestation of those laws, and those laws are projected on earth so they can exist. So the spiritual world projects that in basic terms to the material world, to earth, and those concepts, laws are actually created and active and existing. So if you don't have those laws in the spiritual world, you cannot have them here. You have them as a concept there, and although they do not work there, they work here. It's literally, or well, it's not literally because once again, this is a material type of a analogy, but it's like a projector on a plain movie screen. In order to see something on the movie screen, on that white huge screen, you have to have the projector that projects the picture on it. And then you have to have the veil of darkness so you can really see it. That means to not have the senses to perceive how those things really are, the nature behind them. It's very good analogy actually with a movie projector. Yeah, because when in dark, you can actually perceive the material world. But if you had vision for the immaterial world, you'll be constantly confused to what you're seeing, and you're going to see everything at once, and you'll be like bumping into things. Well, if you are not very good with your abilities, that's like totally different topic now. Okay, I digress because usually uh, all of the spiritual knowledge that 40K is based on, and obviously the mirror of, those are infinite amounts of information, and everything is connected to the next thing and to the next thing. So when you touch upon something, you have to explain like this amount of books that came before that in order to explain this one thing, because you just have to have so much context for everything. Okay, I really should have brought water here. Nothing is as it seems. No. Exactly, it's how it seems in the spiritual world because you can't perceive it correctly. Where on earth you can't perceive it correctly. I hope to. I mean, I never put my sound on the phone, and today it was on because a courier. So I forgot it. I'm sorry, I cannot reach the phone. It's charging. So I hope that I'm not gonna get a tons of notifications during this. Steered by the thoughts and emotions of creatures. Yeah, okay, that at least is somehow, you know, you know, I mean, that is somehow equivalent, at least, to the spiritual science and how things are there. Your thoughts, emotions are going to reflect on the spiritual world, but they're not like clouding it to the point where it's the warp now from 40k. They're just places for that, that the emotions go. Sometimes they do turn into separate entities, which is interesting. If you see that concept once again, if your thoughts turn into entities, feelings turn into that residual energy in the course of years, that maybe turns like it's almost sentient. That is because a lot of concentrated energy or thought was put into something, and that created this, well, new entity basically, that's very, very like low level, but it can cause issues to the material world. So that is why it matters what you think and feel and all those things, but it's totally not out of control and just in the warp, making it worse. From the other side, does make worse the living world, the material world as well. Fascinating stuff. Okay,
Time and
continuing.
nature are meaningless concepts, and nothing is as it seems. In the Black Crusade core rulebook, it refers to the warp as a realm beyond naming, of infinite size, infinite possibilities, and infinite madness. In the Horus Heresy Tempest, it says there are no lies in the abyss, for all that man calls lies are its truth, and all that is neither true nor untrue rejoices therein.
No, that's real messy. Okay, let me think. Can you stop my sound, please? Please stop my sound. That's gonna be great. Да ми спреш звука на телефона, моля те. Моля те, спри го. Писна ми да ми звънка тука. Okay, hope that helps for the phone. The machine spirits. Quickly, machine spirits. Do it now. Thank you, machine spirits. Okay, so there are no lies in the abyss. There are no lies. Yes, okay, that's true at least. Everything is as you can see it or perceive it. If you cannot see it or perceive it, you're just not on the level to see it or perceive it. Man calls lies are its truth. That is true. I mean, it's interesting how it's written. Man calls lies its truth. Yeah, because a lot of people don't believe in anything spiritual, but it's the actual truth, and all that is neither true not untrue rejoices therein. That's, I don't know, that's very weird how it's written. Well, you can say that what is not true also lives there as a negative energy, and what is true also lives there as a positive energy. That's all I can say for that. So that's kind of twisted a bit, I think.
All that is neither true nor untrue rejoices therein. It was again described whilst Magnus was traversing it as a place without form and dimensions, save any he desired to impose upon it, and whilst journeying there, entire concepts and phantom worlds were created just passively by mistake as he moved through it. Distance was physically meaningless in the warp, a dimensionless state, a place without up and down, near and far, in and out, says all must end.
Yeah, something like that.
In the 5th edition rulebook, it says that without the Emperor, chaos would flood the galaxy, leaving nothing behind. No physical matter, no space, no time.
Okay, how they're going to feed on humanity's emotions. And not only that, not only humanity, because they're going to destroy all matter. If there is no emperor, if they're going to destroy all matter, how they're going to feed on humanity? I mean, I think they can. I mean, I think that I got that information a while ago, that they can actually self-sustain now, so they don't need humanity, but at the same time they are connected and meddling with humanity's affairs to their ends. Their demons want to ascend even higher levels. They pride themselves that they are making more of a mess. And if you destroy the materium, then what are I mean, what is there? What are what? it's just it's just very funny. Okay, what are the chaos gods are going? I mean, what's their purpose then? They're not going to be bored or anything. I mean, oh, this source of power, the humanity, the Eldar and the orcs, and the Catan. If there's like a living Catan, I'm not sure about that. Actually, I forgot. The Necrons, uh, the Gene Stealers, the Tyranids, all of that is just no more. And what now? Just warp? I mean, for what they are going to fight then? What is their dominion? I mean, they're already ruling the warp. And when everything is destroyed, they're just gonna chill. I'm not sure how that is. I mean, what's the idea behind that? Uh, I mean, yeah, what is gonna happen, Moonlight, when they conquer everything? It just sounds like they're gonna lose their biggest source, even if even if they can exist without it. It still like seems a bit redundant. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It just in some sources it comes out as they just want to conquer everything. In the other sources it comes out as, well, they need us. In others, well, they don't need us. So I'm a bit, yeah, I don't know. Okay. I thought that they are gonna starve, Mati, but then I read that they can actually self-sustain themselves now. That was in that previous book that I covered, where that Eldar was explaining what types of gods there are. Those that are depending on humanity, those that are not. So yeah, they exist in an infinite of realities. They have a grip over. Yeah, I mean, I know that they have a grip over everything. Also in Warhammer Fantasy, they're humans too. But if they, go and just destroy mankind, that kind of applies absolutely everything that is material. Then what? Like, really, what? Not only 40k, everything that is material. Then what? That's a good question.
Chaos would flood the galaxy, leaving nothing behind. No physical matter, no space, no time, only chaos. In Siege of Terror, Mortis, it describes the warp as void without even the idea of dimensions or duration. Teleporters, which also use the
Well,
warp.
describes the void without even dimension on. Well, there's obviously layers, so I think that multiple writers wrote this, so there's gonna be like some minor inconsistencies from time to time that kind of contradict each other. I mean, they're inconsistencies, obviously, so they're contradicting each other, but something somewhere will not actually connect perfectly. That's tend to happen after 30 something years. I mean, to be honest, we know each of the gods have their motives, so each may have a different goal to have with the universes. One, they will finally conquer it. Well, if they finally conquer it, I mean, they're not conquering it. It says here that they're just gonna destroy it all. No time, no space, no material, no humans, no aliens, no anything, no xenos. I mean, so they're not conquering it; they're annihilating it, uh, destroying it utterly, completely, fully. And so it's like going on the moon, being like, oh, conquering the moon, and then blowing it up, and there's no moon. So you have nothing to rule over. If it comes to the moon, if it comes to the warp, the realm that you came from, you're still ruling that, then maybe they're just gonna fight between each other. I think that's just a topic for another day. We have to continue.
Warp are said to send people through the dimensionless void of the imperium, and that despite only taking a moment in the material world, all spaces of time stretch eternal for the traveller as he goes through it. Time does not function within the immaterium in the same way at all as it does for the materium. For from the perspective of real space, Slaanesh was born at a certain point in history, but within the warp, Slaanesh had always existed and had yet never existed at all as
Yeah, that's very weird. Very weird. I mean, it's very weird because, sorry, I got very, very strange notification. That's so, I mean, about Slaanesh, I'm thinking about Slaanesh. I mean, that she existed, but never existed in the warp in the same time. But from our perspective, he existed. It. Okay, let me think for a second there. He's always existed in the warp, and yet he's never existed at all. That doesn't make any sense. In the immaterium, it must have been always there. But in the same time, because it was created by the Eldar from all of the concentrations of their lower qualities, I'm gonna call them lower, very lower qualities, thoughts, emotions, all of that, then that happened into in the material world. You know, that happened into the material world. It had some time, you know, time attached to that. Unless if the warp, well, yeah, unless if the warp had that already not predicted but existing in that, existing like a print that's supposed to inevitably be printed on material reality. So the concept of slaanesh, what the heck? Ah, okay. I saw what is that. It's not that important. Okay. The concept of slaanesh was already in the warp, let's say. So this is not, still doesn't make sense the way that they explained it. Well, we have to continue because not everything's gonna be like perfectly explainable. I know that logic, I mean, human logic doesn't apply, but when you connect things, somehow, some way, you have to know how to explain those things, damn it. I mean, if that is the case, there's gotta be some kind of a explanation for that. That's what I mean. Logic, I mean, material logic doesn't apply, but a spiritual logic at least has to apply to some point, you know? And there's no, I mean, whereas the warp is the opposite of the spiritual world, of the esoteric science, then this, I don't see the connection here. Maybe it's just like the concept that the writer decided. I just don't see any connection here. Even if I don't, I could still explain it, but I just can't explain that. Yeah.
Well, as the warp does not follow a strict sense of cause and effect, unbound by linear time. In this same Chaos Demons Codex, it speaks of an impossible fortress within the warp of tzeentch's creation, a place where physical space and time are useless concepts. Generators capable of producing small tunnels that punch through the warp to create portals between different locations are described as transvectic, meaning beyond vectors. Also an out-of-universal statement to go with the many others already mentioned here. And in the Battlefield Gothic core rulebook, it tells us that warp space lies alongside and around the material universe, and is a space where there is no time, no distances, only a constantly flowing stream.
Yeah, that is another good connection. Spiritual world and the world both around the physical universe, although around is a bit. I mean, it's accurate enough analogy. You can say it's intertwined with it. Also, it is also around it. It's okay. That's good. Zach, hi to you. Well, thank you very much.
Of immaterium. As you can clearly see, the warp is not something to be trifled with, and it's not even close to the peak of the 40k cosmology. On its own, its infinite layers of outer-versal difference compete with or completely outstrip the entire cosmology of other verses like DC, Marvel, or SCP.
Oh yeah, of course, 40k is the biggest universe ever. But imagine, guys, that the warp was real, and it was, instead of the spiritual world, we have the warp and the structures of the warp and all the evil of the warp and everything that the warp is, then all life would not have any meaning at all. At all. At all. Zero meaning to life. So that's just like the devil wrote it. I mean, the way that it's made, it's really just no meaning to life. It's very dreadful. Very dreadful, because what is waiting for you after that is just awful, you know. I don't know how else to put it. It is just the worst thing. If that was the case, instead of the spiritual world, there's just no point at all of existing. Yeah, not only annoying and terrifying, yeah, it's totally annoying and totally terrifying, and once again, it makes life completely useless to us, you know. It just doesn't make any sense to live. And I mean, why? There's no development really. I mean, reincarnation here was not possible for humans, only for the Eldar before they were snatched by Slaanesh, which makes, I mean, their lives had some kind of a meaning before Slaanesh. Now also their lives have just no meaning here. So unless in 40k someone can totally remake the warp how a spiritual world should be, and then incarnation is possible, and then development of the human beings is possible, so they can reach not only the emperor's state, but like state of you can say angel, archangel, which is totally different concept. That there's not exactly such thing in Warhammer. Yes, we have Saint Celestine, but that's totally not even close to what angels or archangels are. There's also other higher that's just very hard to say, hierarchies after them that are just I can't even put them into words. There's no equivalent of that, which is also interesting because the warp, I mean 40k, the warp, it's it takes a lot of concepts and twist like makes this and also takes them and blows them away and just makes them totally evil, but it doesn't have anything to say about, you know, the positive at all. It just like deleted no angels, archangels, and I cannot mention the others, but yeah, the other spirits. Um, yeah, it's like on purpose. It's like on purposely evil. This is evil. Be totally and utterly uh, mortified, horrified, and don't believe in anything. I mean, that is how the warp is. That's how 40k sounds like. The only thing to believe in is the emperor, and maybe, just maybe, he's just the better thing, and he's gonna save us all somehow. But other than that, I know, to believe in one entity saving you instead of believing yourself, and then what you can actually become, one like, I mean, being that you can't even imagine. If the development of humanity is correct, this is like totally opposite. No hope. Like, it's horrible. Okay, continuing.
As you can clearly see from this video, the amount of evidence for this is just astoundingly consistent from a huge number of different sources within 40k. I often see people complaining about 40k, saying that it can't be scaled, that it can't be quantified, but this sort of attitude frequently comes from a place of not actually having engaged with the media at all. Clearly, it was possible for me to find all of these sources that all line up together, that all make sense together, that all apply to each other from across 20 years of publishing material.
Almost apply to each other. Almost, like I've said, it only applies to each other. I mean, you only could think that if you don't have, the other knowledge, so you can piece that together and make some kind of a sense of it. Other than that, it doesn't actually logically apply everything to each other. For the most part, it does. It does. It's very, very evil, opposite of the spiritual world. But other than that, there's really some concepts that are just there to confuse us, I think, and to make things complicated even more than it already sound like.
If this isn't consistent, then I don't know what is.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's not that consistent from, the spiritual science standpoint.
Anyway, That's it for the video.
Okay, that was a great video. Just awesome. So many things in it. Go check it out, guys. Like I said, the link is down below. Last words, what I can say about that. I didn't know that fans complained that the world cannot be scaled. Why should it be scaled? I mean, it's infinite. I knew that already when I first got into 40k and not even started to dig in fully yet, and I was fully aware that this was the biggest universe that I've ever seen. And you don't need to scale it at all. You don't need to scale it really, because it is based on the esoteric knowledge, which also, if you read that, you also know that there's no boundaries. The boundaries are in the materium, so that at least is totally consistent. And the warp in 40k is the only universe that is based like that on something, you know, from of esoteric knowledge. It is, I mean, it's maybe the total opposite, which is also interesting, because for you to be like, okay, I know all of that, I studied all of those things, and I'm just gonna create the evil side of that and just show everybody how bad things could actually be. That's pretty evil on itself. It just makes me realize now that 40k is even more layered than it seems from the outside. But that is only possible to realize if you actually are in the shoes of the writers. Otherwise, you cannot be. And I personally have studied esoteric science from when I was, well, like 5. I don't know. I think 5. So yeah, my whole life, because I had these concepts uh, immediately when I was conscious of myself and all of that. I just did. And I had a natural interest. I started looking for information, studying, and I got through all kinds of topics, different sources, learn to differentiate it, sources, how the information is given, where it's coming from, all of that. Just it became like a lifetime of study. And then once again, we all know, I guess you should know that if you have to be a writer, you have to know so many things. I mean, depending on what you're going to write for. I mean, if you're like Stephen King, you have to know a lot of murder cases. You have to research the minds of a killer, and if you want to go into the supernatural, you have to study that too. And then you can just come up with stuff out of your butt, not necessarily go by what you study, just make up things as you go, if you wish. But yeah, the point is that you still have to go from a source. You cannot just be like, oh, I don't know anything, so I'm just gonna write ooga booga. you know? So there's that, but I'm impressed in general. You know that from 40k, and it's just marvelous to analyze how also things are written, because each and every one of these sentences, sometimes there's even more in there that you can just dig into. Uh, it's more like ooga booga, net oga boga, but okay. I don't know where I know this. I think it was from Lion King 2 or 3. I'm not sure. I don't have a memory of where I know this particularly. The small mind can't keep up with Warhammer 40k. Well, the small mind will think that it can. That's what I can tell you. Now, webcam parrot has another video. Before I go, the absurd powers of the God Emperor of Mankind. It's a very long video. I do want to cover it because it's absolutely amazing. Go check it out on the channel, guys. He posted this today, and I'm like halfway through it. It's 40 minutes, so I cannot wait to do my research on that and cover that as well. His powers are freaking beyond anything I've ever read. I don't know what to tell you, but maybe he is the most powerful humanoid character ever written. Humanoid, I say, not just some god from this universe that just god, but started from human. That's what I mean. So amazing, amazing. So guys, and the magic words Empress Oioa Tingtang. Yes, put that on a t-shirt. And also Uga Buga. I think Uga Buga is not is not yet licensed or something. Okay, so I hope this. I hope that you enjoyed this analysis. I don't know who else on YouTube that's 40k fan could exactly provide that. So I'm happy that at least I can. It's not just explaining things, but actually explaining the things behind the things, which is what I really love to do. And I hope that you can join for the next video, guys. Uh, um, it's 11:36. I really want to play one mission of that loop, but I have to see how my puppy is now. If he sleeps, if he doesn't sleep, rest a bit, and maybe get to that stream. Not only that I love the game, but I really want to say thanks to to Games Planet that provided me with this key, because otherwise I would not be able to get this game. So I just want to pay homage to them as much as I can to, and let you know that they exist, because the game key sites, some of them like G2K, I would not advise you to go get games from there, but Games Plant are licensed and everything comes from the gaming companies themselves. So you are totally secure if you decide to get games from there, and most of the times they're cheaper than Steam. I mean, a lot of the times. So there's that case. It was a pleasure for me, guys. Bless you all. Thanks, Ed. And you are very inspiring 40k fan too, starting with the journey that we are all in, all on. But yeah, guys, with that being said, see you very soon. And if the stream is gonna happen, you're gonna see it in like 10 minutes. So, bye, guys. Love you.